Nepomniachtchi begins with pawn to e4. What is Gukesh's response? He responds with e5. Very standard and solid. Knight comes out to f3. And will Gukesh play his knight to c6? Yes, he does. Knight to c6 played. And now Yan goes bishop b5. We have the Ruy Lopez on the board. And Gukesh plays pawn to a6, questioning the bishop there. And now bishop comes back to a4. The main move by far is knight f6. But Gukesh plays knight e7. Just to tell you how rare this move is, it's 1% of the other moves that have reached this position. So if let's say 3 lakh games have reached this, knight g7 has been played in only 3000 games. Pawn takes pawn. Nepo goes d4. Well, there was also a possibility of playing c3 and d4, which is more common. But he goes here, knight takes d4. And now Gukesh, what does he do? He takes the knight. And generally, such a queen in the center of the board is very strong. However, thanks to the knight being on e7, it can now jump to c6 and attack the queen. So Gukesh does that instantly and attacks the queen. Yan plays queen e3, and believe it or not, this move hasn't been played by too many strong players. In fact, it's just been played in 6 games or so. So Gukesh takes his time here and plays bishop e7 after nearly 16 minutes of thought. That's quite a lot of time, and also his position looks pretty normal, but Yan can now develop his knight, bring it to d5 and attack the bishop. So he plays knight to c3, presses the clock. What is Gukesh going to do next? Well, he can castle here, and he does it. He's not playing anything flashy, he's just being very solid about this, and he plays castles, and Yan now goes with his knight to d5. He's basically saying to Gukesh, I want your bishop, and I want the bishop pair for myself. The knight on d5 is very strong. Gukesh pushes the pawn to b5. Well, of course, the bishop will move to a diagonal. That is very good. Bishop b3, played by Yan Nepomniachtchi. It's such a non-standard position that we have right now on the board. What is Gukesh's response going to be? He goes knight a5. So while Yan's knight goes for this bishop, Gukesh's knight goes for this bishop, and bishop on b3 is a pretty important one. Queen g3 played, angling at this pawn, and also bishop h6 threatened. Well, the best move here is bishop b7 to give that up, but bishop d6 played by Gukesh may be slightly weird, because now Yan plays bishop f4. You know, there was a possibility to go bishop b7, because if you take here, there is rook c8 and you get counterplay down the c file, but bishop d6, bishop f4, he takes, and now queen takes f4, and once again the c pawn is attacked. So Gukesh can play c6 now or d6. c6 doesn't seem right because of knight e3 and white is better, so he goes d6, and Yan now can castle it out. You know why white has a small advantage here? That's because his pawn on e4 gives him more space than the pawn on d6. So that's the advantage. But is it enough? For now, Gukesh plays bishop e6 and attacks this knight on d5. He would like to take the bishop and then take the knight as well. Rook comes to the d1 square. It's a good move by Yan Nepomniachtchi, because if you take on d5, later on the rook can capture it. Gukesh now plays his rook to e8, just putting it on the semi-open file. Pawn to h3, waiting strategy here. The game is getting intense. Yan has 1 hour 20 minutes on the clock. Gukesh has 1 hour 11 minutes. After 7 minutes of thought, he pushes his pawn to h6, also waiting here. Both sides being very careful here, and Yan makes a slight inaccuracy. If he had played knight e3, this knight versus this bishop would give him a small edge for sure. But after rook d3, Gukesh has a strong move and he plays it. He pushes his pawn to c5. And now c3 is a one little nice move, because after rook g3, He can try and launch an attack here, but instead Jan plays rook g3 directly. He's trying to attack the pawn on h6, but Gukesh calmly moves his king to the side of the board. The attack is not going to go through now. Jan plays pawn to c3. If only he could get his bishop to c2, he would be so happy. That bishop would be extremely strong after the pawn push to e5. But Gukesh says, sorry my friend, you have to go. And he takes on b3. He takes the bishop. Jan now takes it back. A takes b3. And Gukesh might do well to chop another minor piece of the board. Because yes, this knight is a very strong piece. Imagine that white could get a rook here, and then if you take, he would have taken with the rook. But because now he has to take with the pawn, then this d6 pawn is no longer that weak. So Gukesh plays queen to d7, defending the pawn on f7 and connecting the rooks. Black rook can enter down the e file there. What does Jan Nepomniachtchi do now? He plays his pawn to b4. He's trying to create something here, but it's not enough. He takes on b4, Gukesh, and maybe here queen takes b4 is what seems to be a good idea. Yes, he takes with the queen. And now Gukesh has to decide how to continue, because there is some pressure here and there's some pressure here. White rooks are definitely more active, but Gukesh plays rook e5 and tells Jan that your pawn on d5 is a weakness. So Jan comes here, and now there is some latent pressure on the g7 point as well. So maybe at some point an idea could occur. Rook takes g7, king takes g7 and f4. Gukesh plays queen a7, immediately offering a trade of queens, which is a good decision. Rook comes to d3. And now do you trade the queens off or not? Gukesh says not really. He goes rook e2 and he says to Jan, I'm attacking your b2 pawn. This rook endgame is getting very interesting because both sides have their trumps. Queens are traded. He takes, rook takes a7. 38 minutes for Gukesh, 59 for Nepo. Nepo's time usage in this event has been simply phenomenal. Rook, he plays his pawn to b4. And he's now fixed this weakness here. What is Gukesh going to do? His rook is tied down, but his other rook is active. He goes to c2 and ties down white's rook now to the defense of the c3 pawn. Nepo goes rook e1. He wants to get his rook into the game, maybe from here, and try to get from behind. Gukesh plays his king up to h7. But now it's time to enter with your rook. Rook e8, rook d8, and try to win here. Yes, that's what Jan does. He's getting his rook active. What is black going to do? Is black's rook very passive? Can he push this pawn to a5? But then I'm worried that after take, rook d8, this might become weak. But Gukesh finds that it's very important to counter attack. He attacks the c3 pawn twice, and it's not so easy to defend it. Jan goes after the a pawn. Well, it's going to be some exchanges that will take place. Rook takes c3 will happen, and he takes c3, rook takes. Gukesh chops off, and now Jan picks up the pawn on a6. Equal material on the board, and now Gukesh plays his rook to c4. He wants the b4 pawn. Jan takes the pawn on d6. It's amazing how both of them are trading pawns in the position. And now we have 4 pawns each. Whose pawn is stronger, the d pawn or the b pawn? Jan puts his rook behind the b pawn. Gukesh will put his rook behind the d pawn, it seems. This is maybe here, but then he will lose this. So Gukesh goes for a check. King comes up to h2. And it makes sense to push your pawn down the board. b4 played. Good move by Gukesh. Jan pushes his pawn as well. The d pawn is faster, but Gukesh goes after the d pawn. Jan takes the b pawn. Rook takes d6. We are on move 38. Yan has 54 minutes. Gukesh has 34 minutes. The rook comes to a4. Pawn push to h5. h4 played. Both the players look at each other and g6 played, and Yan says, I'm shaking hands, and Gukesh says we have to make 40 moves, and that's the reason why I made my move and did not accept your draw. That was an interesting final moment there, but the game ends in a draw, a very, very solid result.